Let me introduce you to the main characters in this story. I'm Joanna, and I often found myself consumed by my job. My husband's name is Mark. He's a patient and understanding man. Together, we have a lovely daughter named Lily, a curious bundle of joy who is growing up faster than we could keep up with. And then there's Evelyn, Mark's mother. She's been a part of my life since I married her son, but I can't say we were very close. You see, I was always busy with work, trying to make ends meet and provide for my family. That left me with very little time for visits, especially to Mark's childhood home. Evelyn, on the other hand, wasn't much of an outgoing person. She preferred the comfort of her home over going out, and Mark always said it was because she was often ill. One evening, as I was rushing through another hectic day, I had an epiphany. Lily was growing up fast, and I felt she should get to know her grandmother better. It wasn't fair that she hardly knew Evelyn, and I needed to make amends for my long absence. I mentioned my idea to Mark, who smiled warmly and agreed that it was long overdue. "She's your family too, after all," he said, always the voice of reason. So, despite my never-ending to-do list, we decided to pay Evelyn a visit. It had been a while, and I wanted to make up for lost time. As we drove to her house, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nervousness. I had spent so little time with her, and I wasn't entirely sure what to expect. When we arrived at her house, it was clear that it hadn't seen a dust rag in ages. Cobwebs clung to the corners, and a thick layer of dust covered everything. It was a mess, to say the least. Lily, always candid, wrinkled her nose in disgust and asked, "Mommy, why is Grandma's house so dirty?" I exchanged a glance with Mark, who chuckled softly. "Well, we're here to fix that, aren't we?" Lily nodded, and we rolled up our sleeves, grabbed some cleaning supplies, and got to work. We scrubbed and dusted, swept, and mopped, while Evelyn watched with a mix of surprise and gratitude. She hadn't expected us to clean her house, and that made our efforts all the more meaningful. As the sun began to set, we decided to call it a day. We'd done a good job, and I was proud of what we'd achieved. It felt like the right step towards bridging the gap between Evelyn and me. Little did I know that this visit would be the start of something unexpected, something that would change everything for our family. After our first visit to Evelyn's place, things began to change. I could see that Lily and Evelyn were warming up to each other, and that made me happy. It was a small step in the right direction. A few weeks later, I decided to take another day off from work to spend time with my family and help Evelyn around the house. It was a weekend, and I wanted to make our visits a regular thing. So I packed up some cleaning supplies, and Lily and I headed over to Evelyn's place again. This time, as we walked through the front door, I could see the surprise on Evelyn's face. She hadn't expected us to return so soon. "We're here to help, Evelyn," I said with a warm smile. Lily chimed in, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "Yeah, Grandma, we're going to make your house all pretty." Evelyn hesitated for a moment before nodding gratefully. "Thank you, both of you. I appreciate it more than you know." We got to work just like last time, dusting, cleaning, and tidying up. As we worked, Evelyn joined in, and we started talking more than we ever had. It felt good to chat and share stories while we worked. Lily, always full of questions, asked Evelyn about her favorite things. "What's your favorite color, Grandma?" she asked with genuine curiosity. Evelyn smiled. "I've always loved the color blue. It reminds me of the sea, and I find it very calming." Lily nodded, taking in this newfound information. "Blue is nice. I like it too." As the hours passed, we tackled one room after another. I could see Evelyn becoming more comfortable around us. She started reminiscing about Mark's childhood, sharing stories that made us laugh. It was like discovering a whole new side of her. By the time we finished, the house looked entirely different. It was cleaner and brighter, and Evelyn looked at it with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. She said, "I can't remember the last time my house looked this good. Thank you, Joanna, and thank you, Lily." Lily beamed, and I felt a warmth in my heart. Our efforts were paying off, and it seemed like Evelyn was genuinely enjoying our company. I knew we were on the right path, slowly but surely building a stronger bond between us. Little did I know that this simple act of helping out would lead to a series of events that would shake our family to its core. A few more weeks went by, and our visits to Evelyn's house became a regular thing. It was nice seeing her more often, and Lily seemed to adore her grandmother more with each visit. We'd spend our weekends cleaning, chatting, and sometimes even cooking together. One evening, after a particularly productive day of cleaning, we decided to head home as the sun dipped below the horizon. Lily and I climbed into the car, and I started the engine. I felt a sense of contentment, knowing that our family was slowly coming closer together. As we drove down the quiet, winding road, I couldn't help but think about how our relationship with Evelyn was improving. It was then that something unexpected happened. The car started to act strangely, swerving and jerking. Panic welled up inside me as I struggled to regain control. Lily cried out from the back seat, her tiny voice trembling, "Mommy, what's happening?" I gripped the steering wheel, my heart pounding in my chest. "Hold on, Lily," I said, my voice shaky but determined. I fought to keep the car on the road as it veered dangerously close to a tree. It felt like a lifetime in those few moments. Miraculously, we managed to avoid the tree and come to a stop by the side of the road. My hands were trembling as I turned off the engine and took a deep breath. Lily and I were both shaken, but we were unharmed. I hugged her tightly, thankful that we had escaped without a scratch. After ensuring Lily was okay, I got out of the car to inspect the damage. It didn't take long to see what had gone wrong. All 4 of our tires had been slashed. My heart sank as I realized that someone had deliberately done this to us. Lily asked with a quiver in her voice, "Mommy, what happened to the car?" I crouched down to her level, trying to put on a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, sweetie. It looks like someone did something to our tires, but we're safe." I knew I needed to call for help, but I was also beginning to feel a creeping sense of unease. Who would do such a thing? Why would someone want to hurt us? As I reached for my phone to dial for assistance, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a random act of vandalism. It felt personal, and I couldn't help but wonder if our newfound connection with Evelyn had something to do with it. As I stood by the side of the road, staring at our slashed tires, a growing unease settled in my stomach. It just didn't make sense. Who would want to harm us, especially when we were on our way back from helping Evelyn? The thought of someone targeting my daughter and me was chilling. Lily, sensing my distress, asked, "Mommy, why would someone do this to our car?" I crouched down again, trying to find the right words. "I don't know, sweetheart. It's a mean thing for someone to do, but don't worry, we'll get through this." I dialed the roadside assistance number, and they promised to send help soon. While waiting, I examined the tires more closely. It was evident that they had been deliberately slashed with a sharp object. This wasn't just a random act of mischief. Someone had meant to hurt us. The minutes ticked by slowly, and my thoughts kept circling back to the same question. Who could be behind this? I couldn't come up with a plausible answer. Evelyn had been kind during our recent visits, and there was no reason for her to want to harm us. When the tow truck finally arrived, The driver assessed the damage and confirmed that the tires had been intentionally slashed. He changed them for us, and as we continued our journey home, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Once we arrived home, I decided to take a closer look at the surveillance cameras that were installed around Evelyn's house. Maybe they had captured something that could provide a clue. Lily watched curiously as I reviewed the footage on my laptop. As we scrolled through the recordings, my heart skipped a beat. There it was. The shocking moment when someone had approached our car and slashed the tires. My hands trembled as I replayed the video, and I couldn't believe my eyes. Lily pointed at the screen, her voice trembling. "Mommy, who's that?" I swallowed hard as I recognized the figure in the video. It was Evelyn. She had slashed our tires while we were inside her house. My mind reeled in disbelief. Why would she do such a thing? I closed the laptop, my thoughts in turmoil. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. Lily looked up at me, her innocent eyes filled with confusion and fear. I knew I had to confront Evelyn about what we had discovered, but I couldn't predict what would happen next. The revelation from the surveillance footage had left me in a state of shock. Why would Evelyn, Mark's own mother, slash our car tires? I needed answers, and I needed them fast. I decided to wait until Mark got home to discuss this with him. As I nervously paced the living room, Lily played with her toys, unaware of the turmoil in her mother's mind. When Mark finally arrived, I wasted no time in telling him everything I had discovered. "Mark," I began, my voice trembling, "you won't believe what I found on the surveillance footage. It was your mother who slashed our car tires when we were at her house." Mark's eyes widened in disbelief. "What? That can't be right. My mother wouldn't do something like that." I handed him my laptop and played the footage. As he watched the video, his face grew paler and he seemed torn between denial and acceptance. Lily tugged at her father's sleeve, her voice filled with worry. "Daddy, why did Grandma do that?" Mark struggled to find the right words as he looked down at our daughter. I don't know, Lily. We need to talk to Grandma and find out." As the reality of the situation sank in, I felt a surge of anger and fear. I needed to know the truth and protect my family. "We can't just ignore this, Mark. Someone wanted to hurt us. We have to go to the police." But Mark hesitated, his voice filled with uncertainty. "I think we should talk to Mom first. Try to understand why she did this." I was torn between wanting answers and fearing the consequences of involving the police. "All right," I conceded reluctantly, "but we need to do it soon." That night, Mark and I lay in bed, unable to sleep. The knowledge of Evelyn's actions weighed heavily on both of us. I wondered if there was something more to this than met the eye. Mark's silence spoke volumes, and I couldn't help but feel that he was keeping something from me. Finally, he confessed, "Joanna, there's something you need to know. My mother, she's been struggling with a mental illness, schizophrenia." I gasped, my heart sinking. "Schizophrenia? Why didn't you tell me before?" Mark's eyes filled with regret. "I didn't think it would ever become a problem like this. She's usually stable, but sometimes she has episodes." I couldn't wrap my head around it. My mother-in-law, schizophrenic? It explained her erratic behavior, but it also left me wondering about the extent of her condition and whether it posed a danger to us. As we lay there in the dark, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. The web of secrets and uncertainty surrounding our family was getting more tangled by the minute. Mark's revelation about his mother's schizophrenia had left me with a whirlwind of emotions. It explained the inexplicable slashing of our car tires, but it also opened a Pandora's box of questions. I knew we needed answers, and we needed them urgently. The next day, after dropping Lily off at school, Mark and I decided to confront Evelyn. We needed to understand the full extent of her condition and her motives behind the act that had endangered our lives. We arrived at Evelyn's house, and Mark knocked on the door. She answered, and her face brightened when she saw us. "Mark, Joanna, what brings you here today?" she asked warmly. Mark took a deep breath, his voice hesitant. "Mom, we need to talk. It's important." Evelyn's smile faded as she sensed the gravity of the situation. We sat down in the living room, and Mark began, "Mom, Joanna found out about the car tires. She saw it on the surveillance cameras." Evelyn's face grew tense, and she avoided eye contact. I don't know what you're talking about." I couldn't contain my frustration anymore. "Evelyn, we have the footage. It was you who did it. Why would you do that?" Tears welled up in her eyes, and her voice trembled. "I didn't want you to leave. I missed you both so much, and I thought if I did something to your car, you would have to stay a little longer." I felt a mix of sympathy and exasperation. It was clear that her actions were driven by her illness, but it didn't make them any less frightening. Mark put his arm around her, trying to comfort her as he said, "Mom, we understand that you missed us, but this wasn't the way to handle it." Evelyn nodded, her shoulders slumped in defeat. I know. I just didn't want to be alone." Mark and I exchanged worried glances. We knew Evelyn needed help beyond what we could provide. Mark gently asked, "Mom, have you been taking your medication regularly?" Evelyn hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. "Not as often as I should." Mark sighed, his concern deepening. "We're going to get you the help you need, Mom. We'll take you to see a doctor and get your medication sorted out." Evelyn nodded, tears still in her eyes. "Thank you, both of you. I'm so sorry for what I've done." As we left Evelyn's house that day, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief that we were finally on the path to getting her the help she needed. But the journey was far from over. Our family had faced some dark and unexpected twists, and we were determined to support Evelyn as she battled her illness. Our family's journey took an unexpected turn with Mark's revelation about his mother's schizophrenia. It left me with a whirlwind of emotions, understanding, compassion, and a sense of responsibility. One evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Mark and I decided it was time to have a crucial conversation with Evelyn. We needed to discuss her treatment plan and address the incident with the slashed car tires. The atmosphere was tense as we sat down in her living room. Mark began carefully. "Mom, we've been discussing your treatment with a psychiatrist, and we're committed to helping you get better. But there's something else we need to talk about." Evelyn, her expression a mix of curiosity and apprehension, nodded and said, "I'm listening." I took a deep breath and said, "Evelyn, we reviewed the surveillance footage from the day our car tires were slashed. It showed that it was you who did it." Evelyn's face paled, and she looked down, unable to meet our eyes. After a moment of silence, she admitted, "Yes, it was me." My heart sank at her confession, and I couldn't help but ask, "But why, Evelyn? We thought you missed us?" Evelyn hesitated, tears welling up in her eyes. "I did miss you both terribly, but there's something I need to confess." Mark and I exchanged concerned glances. We had no idea what else might be lurking beneath the surface of this already complex situation. Evelyn took a deep breath, her voice shaking. "I didn't just slash the tires to make you stay longer. I did it because I was terrified of what I might do." Confusion and worry washed over me, and I asked, "Terrified of what, Evelyn?" Evelyn's voice quivered as she revealed, "There are times when my illness takes over. I hear voices, see things that aren't there. I was afraid that if you left, I might lose control and harm someone, maybe even you or Lily. My heart ached for Evelyn. She had been silently battling these inner demons, struggling with a reality that was beyond our understanding. Mark reached out, taking her hand gently, and said, "Mom, we had no idea. We're here for you, and we'll support you through this. We'll make sure you get the help you need." Evelyn nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, both of you. I'm so sorry for everything." As we sat there, I realized the depth of the pain and fear Evelyn had been living with. It was a shocking revelation that explained so much, and it made me even more determined to help her on her journey to recovery. Our family had faced adversity, but we were stronger together and ready to face whatever lay ahead. Our family's journey had taken unexpected turns, and the revelation about Evelyn's schizophrenia had opened doors to a deeper understanding of her struggles. Our commitment to her well-being became our top priority. As weeks turned into months, our visits to Evelyn's house became more frequent. We ensured she took her medication, attended therapy sessions, and provided emotional support. Our family dynamic had transformed, and Evelyn was no longer just my mother-in-law. She was family, and her battle was our battle. One evening, as we gathered in her living room, reminiscing and sipping tea, my eyes fell upon an old, weathered box tucked away on a bookshelf. It was filled with faded photographs, letters, and postcards from Mark's younger days. Lily, always curious, joined me in exploring this treasure trove of memories. "Mommy, who are these people?" Lily asked, pointing at the photographs. I smiled. "These are your daddy's family, sweetie. These photos are from a long time ago." Evelyn watched us with a hint of nostalgia in her eyes. It was evident that this box held a significant place in her heart. As we continued to sift through the box, I discovered an old diary that belonged to Evelyn. It was worn and filled with handwritten pages. I opened it, and as I began to read, I realized that it held the key to a long-buried family secret. Evelyn noticed my expression and gently said, "Joanna, that diary holds the story of our family, a story that I've kept hidden for years." I looked at her, my curiosity piqued. "What kind of story, Evelyn?" She took a deep breath and began to recount the tale from her diary. It was a story of pain, loss, and a family torn apart by a dark secret. A secret that had haunted her for years. A secret that explained why she had been so determined to keep us close. As Evelyn spoke, her voice trembling with emotion, Mark and I listened intently, our hearts heavy with the weight of the revelation. The family secret unveiled before us was a reminder that our pasts are often more complicated than we can imagine, and that understanding and compassion were essential as we moved forward together. In that moment, as we confronted the truths of our family's history, I knew that our bonds had grown stronger. We were prepared to face the future as a united family, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Our journey had been filled with surprises and revelations, but it had ultimately led us to a deeper connection and a newfound appreciation for the strength of family ties.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! Is something wrong?" Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated. making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, "Yes. That's Nick for you." Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry." Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, "Get his boss here immediately." It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. "What is that idiot doing?" "All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next." Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. "If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you." I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry." Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. "Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay?" I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. "Yes, I'm inviting my father." "That's great. I might invite my parents too." I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.